grew up looking for white vans from the FCC to arrest me. And I was very careful only to operate on stormy winter nights in the winter and on federal holidays, because I figured the FCC took the night off and were listening. And so I operated not many times my entire career, but I had fun with this. And then being a DJ on a shortwave radio station of your own making was kind of cool too. And so that's how I got up. That's how I started to look. So when I started looking about communications, it was all about bottom-up community. It was all about connecting with people. I learned really early about one-to-one and one-to-many communications, and I really started to understand about being social and about connecting and about sharing. And no one ever taught me how to do this. It just came with the territory, sort of like living on the streets of the radio in this particular case. And but I really cared about communications, and I always found it fascinating that whenever I was by myself, I would turn the radio on and say CQ, and someone found me. And it didn't matter where they were from, we always found something to say. And you know, for me, Twitter has become very much like a radio for me in terms of open hailing frequency. And so for 20 years, well 10 years I did the amateur radio stuff, and then many years later I happened to have been home from work one day when a software product, actually it was the first iPhone from a company called Vocaltech in Herzliya, Tel Aviv. They came out with software to let you talk on the internet. This was 1995. And the crazy thing is that my first social media ID was WA2BOT, which is my ham radio call sign, because back in February of 1995, when people first started using the internet phone and started talking to each other, we were pretending to be using our radios, talking through antennas, using propagation to talk to people, but in real life, we had computers and software and connectivity. And that's when I noticed about 20% of the people who were online were actually amateur radio operators using their call signs. But so we're all pretending, but we started to connect. And you know, the evolution of first finding people online and talking to them, that was the first time I noticed that on the internet it was capable to have an open global frequency. I mean, I was on IRC. Any of you guys use IRC? Way back, right? So then the thing about IRC that was interesting, and at the same time I was on CompuServe, on CV Chat and stuff, and what I found interesting with that is you got to be anonymous, and you got to be ubiquitous. And you could sort of set the theme of your talks, but you couldn't really authenticate who you're talking to. You were actually encouraged to be somebody, but not necessarily yourself, just like on CB radio. And then that was sort of my background in all this. And then one accident after another. So it turned out I worked on Wall Street, I worked at the World Trade Center. And when I discovered internet telephony and became passionate about it, it actually overcame my life. I mean, the same way amateur radio did when I was a kid. Because I used to spend all my time talking on the computer. And I ran a mailing list, and I set up some forums, and I sort of built community from the bottom up, applying what I learned from amateur radio. Never so much thinking about what was in it for me at the time. I never thought about making a dime in it. What I did figure out was just how to build friendships and how to connect people with people. And I did all this for a while, and then like 6 months into this, someone asked, is it possible to interconnect a telephone and a computer? And being the guy who did it on ham radio, I said, sure. And next thing I know, I accidentally started the world's first internet telephony network, which was pretty significant back in this winter of '95. And I helped start this voice over IP industry. And my suffocation of this stuff around me got me fired from my day job, which is life lesson number one, getting fired can save your life. Because I got fired in July of 1996, and I went on for 3.5 years and built up a conference business, although I didn't know what I was doing, that built community and helped people understand this whole craziness. And I actually sold my business the day before 9/11. And 9/11 happened. The company I worked for lost 700 people. And I had the kind of day job that I could have been one of those people. But I got lucky because I got fired. So if you ever around people who complain about not having a job, what you don't realize is that their life may have been saved. And they don't know it. And that, you know, it's possible that the next time you meet somebody, that their life can be altered. And so I had a really interesting experience through all that. In fact, I think the best thing my parents ever did for me at the time was nothing. Because when I got fired, I had no savings, I had a young family, I had a big mortgage, and I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And while maybe I wasn't going to live on the streets, it felt like that. And my parents, who could have afforded to do anything, they did nothing. In the summer of 1996, I grew up a little bit. Although I think I'm still always a kid, but I kind of like how to deal with reality and sort of created this event, and I built community. And the punchline was on September, but in the winter of 2000, I figured things were something was going to happen. I didn't know what it was. So I ended up selling my business. I spent all of 2000 trying to find a buyer, and I sold my business for like 50-something million bucks. The day before 9/11, because after 9/11 it was worth a lot less. And then the company sold it to went bankrupt, so I had to buy it back. But it was an interesting thing. And then, well, what I was noticing through all of this is that social media was evolving. See, my first social media platform was the radio. The idea of being able to find people, connect with them, and feel them, and being able to stay CQ, and be able to connect with people, with their voices, with their souls, not for business, but for fun. And I had noticed that being online, we're understanding people's presence. I mean, presence is something which, and when you're online and your friends online, maybe you send them an instant message these days, maybe you send them an email, but the whole rise of presence is something which is very important to the future of communications. How many people here are on Foursquare? All right, so despite the fact that for 10 years, TELUS and Bell and everyone else has been trying to get you to buy into location-based services, something has happened, and now you're opting in and sharing your location with everybody, which is kind of cool. Location-based services is part of the future of presence because you're opting in, at least with some devices, to share with you where you are and where you're going. And you will find over time that the social networks are evolving. They're not phone companies. But at the end of the day, if you have anyone here, I imagine some of you are still customers of Rogers or TELUS or Bell, right? And the thing is, if you have a phone call, someone's trying to call you on your cell phone's dead, but you just checked into this conference and you checked in with a friend of yours, wouldn't it be cool if they could somehow, and it was an emergency call to you, and someone had to get to you right now, wouldn't it be cool if your operator could look at Foursquare, see who you checked in with, and maybe redirect the call to that person hoping they could find you? Wouldn't it be cool if you're in Hong Kong right now and you don't want to have roaming charges from Bell, and you log in, and all of a sudden you get an alert on Facebook saying someone's trying to reach you, could you instant message them and tell them you're okay? Right? Because the social networks are evolving, and they understand presence. They have no vested interest in being a communication company. Communication companies, on the other hand, they went to sleep for a few years, and it turns out it's the social nets that have the directory of their customers, which makes no sense. And that, while the operators may try to be social networks, they can't be. And the social networks don't understand the communications industry, but I think one day, maybe sooner than you know, the two of them will be able to overlap and share information with privacy, because no one seems to care about privacy anyway. They'll be able to share stuff to at least deliver emergency calls to you and deliver stuff. But the thing about Twitter that's changed everything for me is, any people here follow me on Twitter? Just curious, a few of you? You may notice that in the mornings I say good morning. If you're online between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., you may notice if I'm in the East Coast, I say good morning. Now the reason why I say good morning is because it's a lot easier than saying CQ. But it's the same equivalent to me, because when I say good morning on Twitter, anywhere from 3 to 30 people respond, and I make it a point, if I see the person, to respond back to everybody. Because it's the way I start the day, the way I connect, the way I feel stuff, and it was sort of the first time I realized that there was a global frequency out there that everyone can connect to. And then when I started looking at just life, I use Twitter really like the radio. I don't have to meet everyone who I talk to, as long as someone's nice, it's cool. I look at it just as like being a person, though. It's like, it's not about business, it's about people. You keep everything, and if you're never, by the way, in business, it's always personal. It's nothing about business about this. But if businesses will understand that there are humans out there that have feelings, you'll be much more successful using social media to connect to someone's soul than to scare them. Rather than